I'm sure you figured out that I'm filling in for Greg. What you'll never figure out is where he is. At least that's what the guy I hired told me. Anyway, today is National Cheese Ball Day. That's right, it's a day dedicated entirely to Jesse Waters. Here's a crazy story. A Brazilian woman wheeled the corpse of an elderly man into a Rio de Janeiro bank to try to get him to co-sign on a loan. But how'd she get the idea to pretend a dead guy was alive? Courtney Love says Taylor Swift is not important and not as interesting as an artist. In response, Taylor Swift said, "At least I didn't kill my husband." John Wayne Bobbitt, the man whose wife famously chopped off his penis, has had all 10 toes amputated due to health problems he blames on drinking contaminated water. I don't want to kink shame, but I'm starting to think this guy's just into it. So, as you've probably heard if you watch this channel, California has mandated a $20 minimum wage for fast food workers. Now, I'm sure I would have loved to have made this kind of cash back when I was working in a fast food restaurant in California, right? Who'd have thought that this uggo would be on TV someday? It's crazy. But raising the minimum wage in Cali is already looking like one of the worst ideas to come from that state. And this is a place that gave us Gutfeld. You know, back before the exclamation point. I know. He was great on Happy Days, though. Anyway, California, guess what? When you raise the cost of producing the food gets more expensive. Up to 8% more expensive, actually, according to a report by Kalinowski Equity Research, which I trust because it sounds Polish. And also because it makes sense. In a world of finite resources, one group gaining has to mean another group losing. It's math that even a woman can understand. I'm a woman, I can make that joke. If restaurants are gonna need to pay their workers more, that money's gonna have to come from somewhere. It's basic economics. So if you're in California and you see the price of your In-N-Out burgers suddenly get more expensive, blame the leaders you elected, because they redistributed your money, even though you're already dealing with some of the highest taxes in the country. Another possibility is that since they have to pay the workers more, they're just not gonna hire as many workers. Actually, that's already happening. Take it from Harsh Raj Guy. I'm pretty sure he's not Polish, but he does own almost 200 fast food restaurants in the state. If only I were single. He told Business Insider that he plans to cut workers' hours and put in self-service kiosks in all of his restaurants, adding that he's moving to do so as quickly as possible. With the wage increase, he says it just, quote, makes more sense for us to spend the capital expenditure on technology. Now, just think if this had happened 14 years ago and I'd never gotten to work that job at Boston Market. I wouldn't have been able to make any money or get any of that material for my book and my shows. And worst of all, I wouldn't have this amazing picture to prove that sometimes women really do look better at 35 than they did at 21. Guy also told Business Insider that he worries this whole thing is going to make it harder for fast food restaurants to compete with sit-down chain restaurants. It's a fear that other franchise owners say they share. These chain restaurants aren't subject to the wage increase, so that means they're not going to have to raise their prices because of it. So the cost's pretty much the same whether or not you have a waiter. You're probably going to pick to have a waiter, especially if he's hot. Look, it's not that I don't love chain restaurants. Here I am at a Longhorn Steakhouse 2 weeks ago. Yeah. I have the receipts. Or just that I do love fast food, which I do, by the way. Here's a picture of me eating Burger King in bed from before I got married. See chains behind the bag. Here's a picture of me eating Burger King in bed after I got married. Because once you get married, you can only eat in bed on a towel. The point is, once the government gets too involved, it's not about what we like anymore. They pick the winners and the losers like a bookie who's fixed the game. And sure, there may be some winners, but a lot of time, there's a lot more losers. Reminds me of online dating. So, you get higher prices for consumers and fewer jobs for workers. We saw what happened in Minneapolis recently. They mandated minimum pay for Lyft and Uber drivers, and Lyft and Uber announced that they were going to leave the city over it. Uber and Lyft claimed that raising the rates would make rides too expensive for many consumers. And as an Uber spokesman put it, the move would likely lower hourly pay for drivers since they have to spend so much time waiting and looking around for passengers who could afford it. Opposing minimum wage laws doesn't mean that you don't want people to earn money. So just because you don't think the government is the best way to solve a problem, that doesn't mean that you don't care about the problem. It just means you see all the other problems that it might create. And if the road to hell is indeed paved with good intentions, you can bet the government paved that road overpaid with your money. And I bet there's still a lot of potholes. Let's welcome tonight's guest. This Kennedy would also die from a shot of gluten. Host of Kennedy Saves the World podcast, Kennedy. All right. This Norton is not antivirus. Comedian Jim Norton. He serves all his dishes with a side of handsome. Chef and restaurant owner Andrew Gruel. And he's so big, people can't stop talking about how he's big. New York Times bestselling author, comedian, former NWA World Champion, All right, Andrew, okay. As a restaurant owner in California, when you saw this topic, were you like, yeah?
I mean, look, so there's so much to unpack here, but I'll start with the fact that if the government was going to actually do something, wouldn't they just mandate that McDonald's fix their ice cream machines? Isn't that something that we can all get around?
Yeah.
But the unintended consequences, as I said, this bill was promoted as something that was going to help the worker and it was going to hurt the corporation. It's ending up hurting the worker and helping the corporation. Already, we've seen it. Thousands of workers have been laid off. All of the corporations saw this coming, so they're automating their workforce. The workers that are on payroll are going to have to do double the amount of work, and the cost of everything is going to increase. The small businesses that don't necessarily fall within the purview of this bill are going to have to increase their own wages, but they can't afford to automate, so they have to increase their prices or shut down. So once again, inflating the cost of everything in their local economy. But the actual approach to this, if you want to help the workers, just cut payroll taxes. California has the highest payroll tax of any state in the country. You put more money in the workers' pockets without inflating the currency, well, then you can actually solve this issue, but they don't want to do that. Change the incentive structure, right? We can even say that if you cut the payroll taxes for the businesses that are paying a certain threshold, well, then they're going to be incentivized to do so. But it's not about actually helping the worker, because if it was, then Gavin Newsom, the governor of California, would be paying his workers $20 an hour, but he's only paying his workers $16 an hour at both of his restaurants. So this is just hypocrisy. It's absurd, and it's given an unbelievable amount of power to this new fast food council that's written into the bill that they have powers that go way beyond work, wages, hour violations, any of that stuff. It's just about more layers of power and hurting the small business.
Whoa, great answer.